Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our reaction and review to Black Mirror Season 6, Episode 1. Joan is awful. This should this video this Matt and Jess are awful. Here we go. Let's get in.
Speak for yourself. The moral of the story is always read the terms of the contract before you sign it.
Okay. See, to only be a fly on the wall in Netflix's office when Charlie Brooker came in there and was just like, hear me out, guys. I got an idea. You may not like it, but I got an idea.
Good for Netflix for having a sense of humor about themselves and actually being okay to kind of put themselves out there to the test of basically this episode should be called Netflix is awful, right? So, I mean, good for them for doing that. It gives me some respect for the people behind it being like, we're okay with this idea.
Okay, this is the first video we've had discussing Black Mirror on the channel. So, with that in mind, I'm putting on the hard hat here because I'm going to start with the hottest possible take imaginable.
Here we go.
This is my favorite episode of Black Mirror ever. I love this episode so much. There's one little nitpick I'll get to kind of close to the end of it, but it's just sort of, it all comes down to personal preference, right? I do like things that are dark and serious and intense and all of that, but this episode is just 1,000,000% my speed. I like things that are funny. I'm a big Annie Murphy fan. I love things that are postmodern and kind of weird. And I just think this was so inventive, so well done, so freaking funny. Oh my gosh.
No, this was a really funny. It's not my favorite one ever, but it's up there. I mean, I'm a fan of National Anthem, but I mean, it was the first episode I had ever seen. It has Rory Kinnear, who's one of my most favorite actors on the planet. But I mean, for me, some of the top tier, White Bear and, Nosedive. Oh my God. Anyone out there remember that the People app came out shortly after Nosedive? It was horrifying. And with this episode, I mean, there definitely is sort of a little bit of horror with it as well, because we're deep into the AI era and it's quite out of control.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about that, the real life connections, a whole lot more. But before we dive deeper into this world of Joan is awful, hit that subscribe button, because not only are we doing reactions to all the other Black Mirror episodes this season, but we're also covering Silo, outstanding show on Apple TV, very dystopian.
Yeah.
Which is on MGM Plus. It's a horror show with Harold Perrineau. It is so incredibly good.
Yeah, it's very mirrored to Lost. The executive producers behind Lost also make this show.
And then, of course, The Walking Dead Dead City premiered today. It's we are all eating very good, and I'm not talking about some bland cuisine here. I'm talking really good non-vanilla content.
Yeah, you talking about all those burgers we watched Joan eat?
Okay, I could eat a couple of those. I could not eat the burgers to the extent in which Joan ate them and then promptly dropped something in the middle of a church. But we'll start with the real world stuff before we get too crazy with everything. Because you mentioned the AI part of it. I think there's a universe where somebody basically goes into ChatGPT, tells them a little bit about themselves, and is basically write a treatment about my life, enter, and it's not that far out of the realm of possibility that you get this spat out back at you.
No, it's not. And I mean, I know the creator of the show said that he did something like this for one of these episodes to just see what it was going to spit back out. And he was like, nah, this ain't good. But no. I mean, they are, perfecting it more and more every second of every day. So could we get to a spot like what we saw in this episode? Yes, 100%. I mean, we all know that our phones are listening to us. That was part of the episode to me that was really a horror show, because it's absolutely true. I'll be talking about whatever, how to cook an egg, how to change my tire. And then all of a sudden I'm being fed all kinds of, here's how to change a tire. Here's where to buy tires. Here's the tools you need to change a tire. Hey, you want me to come and fix your tire? It's crazy.
It really, this episode, it's an epitome of that level of craziness. It's also sort of tangentially connected to this idea of we know way too much about each other. Like, let's be honest here for a moment. You go on Twitter, somebody says something, and you're like, do I really need to know about that? No, this is like pulling that to the absolute extreme level. And I think what it really nails is just like, we all have that insane curiosity to see something fictional, but also still project it as real in our minds. And, all these different people are logging on to, Streamberry, aka Netflix, and seeing this and being like, oh, here's that hairstyle, which is basically just Rogue from X-Men, but it's just sort of like, oh, I want to watch this because this looks like Joan. And then, oh, this is something I'm familiar with. It's the moment you present somebody with something that looks very much connected to their real life, especially with awful attached to it, you're going to watch it no matter what you lie to yourself or no matter what you tell everybody else. You're going to like secretly like go into the bathroom and like put it on. You're going to do something.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's also sort of a look into those sort of parasocial relationships that lots of people have with people on YouTube, people on reality shows where you're watching something like we just covered the latest season of Survivor, where it was one of the few seasons out there that wasn't just filled with, influencers. It was like filled with a bunch of people who were like felt very genuine, lots of like oddballs. Like I kept watching this season being like, man, I really relate to this person. This person's filled with like a bunch of oddballs like me. This is so cool. And that's, still the same feeling, even though it's the opposite, where it's like, oh, this person is me, but they're awful. And when you really kind of get into it, was Joan that awful? That's the thing, that by the time we got to the end of this, where it was like, we learned that Joan was really just this really regular person who was living a life that they weren't that happy in. They were, stuck in a job where they were kind of the middleman that had to fire people, which is not a job anybody likes. She didn't revel in it. She wasn't doing it to be awful. That was part of her job, and yes, she shouldn't have been talking to her ex, but she was in an unhappy relationship that she put herself in and made some human choices. I'm not excusing cheating or anything, but when I saw the title of this episode, I expected Joan to be like straight awful, like terrible human being. And it was interesting the way that they were kind of explaining it at the end, where it was like, oh, we tried to do like Joan is awesome, and no one was interested in that. But the minute we put awful on it, people would watch, even though the content is not that interesting.
It's part of the brilliance of this episode that you can stamp any sort of like adjective or behavior onto something and it automatically wants to sort of bring your mind to that place. And the way the fictional sort of Streamberry show amplifies everything to make Joan this, like you said, she's not awful. She's done some bad things, but everybody's done some bad things in life. But you're blowing those out to another degree and making it so extreme so that people who actually know Joan in real life kind of get brainwashed by it. They're like, you know what? That really is awful. Maybe Joan actually is awful. Maybe I've been giving her too much credit in my head for everything that she has done.
Yeah, and I think that it mirrors a lot of what happens with reality TV. Everybody watches reality TV, and we all know that what we're watching is amplified. I mean, we've even seen lawsuits coming out against like Love is Blind, where some of the contestants are like, this was taken out of context, this happened to me, and then I was getting pushed to say whatever, sort of behind the scenes things I wouldn't normally say or wouldn't normally do, or you cut it together in a way that wasn't in context to anything I was saying to make me look a certain way. And we all know that that's happening on reality TV, but we all just keep watching to be like, wow, yeah, that person is awful. How dare they?
One of the things that I think this episode really gets right, and this could have gone wrong with just like one wrong decision, is the casting. And by that, I mean, Annie Murphy is somebody who people know, but you don't know her on the level that you know a Salma Hayek. Like, unless...
Or Kate Blanchett. Good for her for doing that cameo. I was like, kidding. Oh my goodness.
Like, unless you watched, one of the two previous shows that Annie Murphy is known for, and one of them is Kevin Can F Himself, which like me and 20 other people watched. It's just like you probably don't immediately see her, especially with this hairstyle, and be like, oh, that's her. So it really,
Yeah, I didn't know who she was.
it masks, I think, the twist later on that,
Yeah.
like, oh, you're a projection of this Annie Murphy from this other world really well, whereas Salma Hayek, everyone knows Salma Hayek. There's no way you can mask Salma Hayek in any sort of way, and that to me just makes it so well done. And to have Salma Hayek, who she's done like everything across the sun, like genre-wise.
Yeah, she has.
Like, I'm not surprised that Annie signed up to do this because she's mostly a comedic actress. But for Salma Hayek to be like, I'm okay with having a scene in this church and then like me talking a probably fictional version of her family, but still sort of going in on that after the fact. Like, she was so funny in this.
She was an excellent cast. I'm really glad she decided to do it. I mean, it feels the same as Netflix being okay to poke fun at themselves and sort of be the villain in this episode. That's not really Joan. It's Netflix, and it's the same with Salma Hayek to be like, I'm okay to like poke fun at myself and, have a laugh like at my expense and have other people have a laugh at my expense. I was just like, good for you. Like that's what I felt out of this whole thing, watching, Netflix do this and Salma Hayek do this. I was just like, I felt good about it. It wasn't like watching White Bear, where by the end of it, I was like, this is a great episode, but man, I don't feel great.
No, there's no way to feel great after White Bear. You just need to go like immerse yourself in ice cream or something. But even Michael Cera, it is the perfect amount of Michael Cera. And because let's be all honest here. Like I like Michael Cera. I've liked a lot of the things that he has done, but there is such a thing as Michael Cera overload. If this entire episode was him, it would be too neurotic. It would be a little bit too weird. But to have him be there at just sort of like 5 minutes and really explain the twist at the end, like that made so much sense. And my absolute favorite part though is seeing the Annie Murphy Joan basically be like, I have to do this. I have to destroy the computer or whatever else they called this because the real Joan would do this. And there is like this influx of multiverse stuff going on right now where it feels like every comic book movie or show or whatever is going to do it. Like that could have also gone really, really bad, but just enough of it so it didn't seem extreme. I was happy with it.
No, I was happy all the way through with this episode. I mean, the reveal was really cool. The ending was great, where it was like, yeah, the real Joan she's on house arrest, but so is Annie, like it's and that they've made a friendship and that they were able to kind of take this all down together. It was a cool ending because this show does not always give a happy ending.
Okay, here is my one minor nitpick with this episode, and I really didn't start...
I wonder if it's the same as mine.
Okay, well, we're going to find out, because here's what I was sort of thinking. After I watched this episode, I went for a bit of a walk, because this is how I think about things. I just walk around and it's like, oh, okay, but I was thinking a lot about this from just like a corporate business sense. If I am Streamberry at this point, yes, legally, apparently, you can do this. You can get away with this, and for like the immediate future, everybody thinks it's fun. But I would think if I watched Joan is Awful, 5 minutes after that, I'm being like, I'm canceling this service. Like, I'm doing this right now because it seems like there's no way this is profitable because everybody's going to cancel because nobody wants this to happen to them. And who's to say it won't happen to them? Like, this just seems like a bad business move.
Oh, it's a tough one. It was even interesting sort of seeing the CEO sitting down with a reporter and then the CEO being like, here's your episode. Yeah. I was like, oh no. My beef with this episode was once Joan went to the lawyer and the lawyer was like, listen, you signed this contract, these terms of service with Streamberry. You agreed to this, like whether you read what you signed or not, you signed it. So it just doesn't matter if you understood it or not. You should have read it and you didn't. So here we are. And she was kind of like, well, how is this actually happening? Like, how do they know what I'm doing? And like I said at the beginning of this video, it was all through her phone, that your phone listens to you. Yeah, it does. I was like, when she walked out and she was holding her phone and texting or whatever, I expected her to just drop it in the garbage because that's what I would do. If someone was like, this is all happening because you have a phone and your phone is tracking you, guess what? I don't have a phone anymore and I don't care if you can't get a hold of me anymore. There is no way that I'm letting this service continue on with me.
One, it is a good point. Two, they could have sold her keeping the phone if they did something where they really made it look like she was just like addicted to the technology. She couldn't get away from her phone. But I didn't never feel like that was this character. I mean, she used her phone, but I think you're right. I don't think it would be like a situation where, oh, this phone is made of lead. I can't drop it into proverbial Mount Doom. I must still have it with me.
Yeah, I think that this episode did need to show more of a connection with her and her phone, that it was like, I can't, this is happening to me, but man, I just can't be taken away from my technology.
Do you think there's a case that this episode should have been like 5 or 10 minutes longer with that in mind? I mean, it was fairly long, but I know
It was pretty long. It was like an hour.
But there's like an episode coming up later this season where, we haven't seen ahead yet, but I think there's one that's like an hour and 15 minutes, hour and 20. This blew by so fast to me. Like, I was just watching it, making breakfast, eating breakfast. I was like, there's 5 minutes left in this. I wanted more.
Oh, it absolutely blew by. And if the rest of this season is as good as this episode, I'm going to be very excited. Because there's a couple episodes I think we're all really looking forward to, like the Aaron Paul episode, the Demon 79 episode. I'm extremely excited about that episode because the actress that was in Killing Eve. I loved her in that. Speaking of sort of like oddball characters, like she plays oddball characters so well. I cannot wait for that episode.
There was even like an advertisement in this episode for Lock Henry, one of the other ones that is coming up, which was really, really fun. Now, before we check out, here's something I came up with in my head that is incredibly stupid and is perfect for the tail end of this for those of you who are still watching. I put a lot of thought into who I would want to see play myself in the Mad is Awful show, and I've got a few different choices here. So you guys can let me know.
I only have one for me, and it's Kate Hudson or nobody.
Okay, Kate Hudson is good. See, Kate Hudson would be a lot of fun. I've got a fun option. I've got like just an awesome option for me. And a third option is if I just want some ridiculously handsome person to play me. In that case, Henry Cavill, you're leaving The Witcher. It doesn't seem like you're playing Superman. Sure, you're also like 3 times as muscular as me, but you can do it, Henry. I believe in you. Also, thought a little Pedro Pascal. You can be.
Oh, he can play me as well. He's amazing.
Pedro Pascal's just gonna like go back and forth. Okay, Pedro. I know you've got The Last of Us coming up. You're still in the man. I know you're busy. You can do this. Also, Jeff Bridges. I know you're a little bit older than me, but come on. Who does not want Jeff Bridges to play them? I'm just throwing it out there. That is how I've spent my day, by the way. If it's thinking of people who need to play me on this show.
No, this concept for this episode, I think, is going to resonate with a lot of people. It was a good first episode because it was funny. There was a little bit of a horror aspect to it, a voyeurism aspect to it. We had some big names in this episode as well, and it had that sort of parasocial relationship that everybody kind of has with people on reality shows and wanting to watch a train wreck, even if it's kind of like this, where it's like, Joan is awful. Okay, yeah, the title's really catching and very sort of clickbaity, but then you watch a show and it's like, oh, she's getting up in the morning, she's having some bland eggs, she's meeting with her therapist, she's going to work. Like, it's just kind of like, she's sitting down to watch Streamberry. I'm like, why is anybody watching this show? And it is that it's The Connection.
The bar is set really high, guys, for the rest of season 6. And I'm still, by the way, ready to just do battle over my "this is the best Black Mirror episode ever" comment, because I have not seen what Twitter thinks of this episode yet. So there might be a lot of people who just hate it, who are just going to like running me down the street.
I would be really surprised. This was so well executed.
All right. Well, thank you guys for hanging out with us. We've got a lot more Black Mirror conversation coming, more reviews for the rest of this season.
Yep.
Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything on Walking Dead, Dead City, Silo, From. Thank you guys. We'll see you here next time.